Command Sergeant Major Hayes handed me the security printout at morning formation. 46 overnight visits to my house while I was in Afghanistan. I stared at the green bar computer paper in his hands. The perforated edges, the Fort Liberty security letterhead, the smell of laser toner still warm from printing. Hayes had separated the pages carefully, and they made that distinctive tearing sound along the dotted lines. "Sir," Hayes said quietly. His voice was tight. 26 years of service, and I'd never seen him look like this. Scott Wheeler, defense contractor, entered base 46 times in 9 months. I took the printout. The paper had that waxy texture you only get from military-grade security printers. Each line was a timestamp, gate entry, gate exit. Every single entry, Hayes continued, was when you were deployed, not once when you were home. The formation was still going on around us. 850 soldiers standing at attention, but Hayes had pulled me aside, into the battalion office, away from eyes. I ran my finger down the list. January 23rd, February 4th, February 16th. The dates blurred together, but the pattern was crystal clear. Scott Wheeler had visited my house where my wife Jennifer lived, where my daughter Kaylee came home from school, 46 times while I was in a combat zone. Exit times were always early morning, 6 a.m., 7 a.m., 8 a.m., overnight stays. "Sir, Hayes started, then stopped. "I didn't want to bring this to you, but as your command sergeant major, I couldn't not." I looked up at him. Robert Hayes, father of 3, been through 2 deployments with me. I'd trusted him with my life, and now he was handing me this. "Does anyone else know?" I asked. "Just me and the gate security supervisor. We kept it quiet." I nodded. My throat was tight. "Thank you, Robert." But I was already 9 months too late. The homecoming had been 3 weeks ago, March 3rd, 2025. I'd flown back from Afghanistan to Fort Liberty, back to Fayetteville, back to my family. 9 months gone, the longest deployment of my career. Kaylee had been there at the airfield, 17 years old now. In her JROTC uniform, standing so straight, she'd run to me and I'd held her and she'd cried into my shoulder, my daughter, my girl, safe. Jennifer had hugged me too. "I'm so glad you're home," she'd said. "I missed you so much." But even then, something had felt off. She'd pulled away too quickly, made excuses, said she was tired, overwhelmed. That 9 months was a long time and she needed to adjust. I'd believed her. The house felt different when I walked in. I couldn't place it at first, but things had been moved, rearranged. The furniture wasn't where I'd left it. My office, the one with the shadow box holding my Silver Star medal, had been cleaned out. Files reorganized. "I was just trying to help," Jennifer had said when I asked. "Keep things tidy while you were gone." In my office now, I looked at that shadow box on the wall. The Silver Star, black frame, glass front, star-shaped metal suspended on blue ribbon. The citation mounted below. For gallantry in action against an enemy of the United States in Afghanistan. I'd earned that for pulling 3 soldiers out of an ambush, saved their lives, took shrapnel in my shoulder doing it, but I couldn't protect my own home. Kaylee had kept all my letters, every single one I'd sent from Afghanistan. She'd shown me the shoebox 3 days after I got home, opened it on the kitchen table. The envelopes still had APO addresses, some with sand caught in the folds. You could feel it, gritty against your fingers. "I read them all, Dad," she'd said, "every week, sometimes twice." I'd picked one up. The paper had been aged by heat and dust, turned slightly yellow. It smelled like the Middle East. Dust, diesel fuel, that scent you can never wash out of your clothes. My handwriting looked shakier in these letters. I'd been writing them after missions, hands still trembling. Almost every letter said the same thing. "Tell Jennifer I love her. Tell her I'm thinking of her. Tell her I can't wait to come home. I'd meant every word. The motel receipt fell out of Jennifer's purse 4 days after Hayes showed me the printout. Kaylee and I were helping her bring groceries in from the car. Jennifer set her purse on the counter and it tipped over. Contents spilled, keys, lipstick, wallet, and a small piece of thermal paper. I picked it up. Budget Inn, off base, room 127, 3 nights, dated February 8th through February 10th. I was in Afghanistan on February 8th. Jennifer came back into the kitchen, saw me holding it. Her face changed. "What is that?" she asked. But her voice was sharp, defensive already. "A receipt," I said. I kept my voice level, calm. 24 years of military training teaches you control. "From a motel, while I was deployed." "So?" She snatched it from my hand. "I stayed there. So what?" "I'm not accusing you of anything. I paused, chose my words carefully. This was my wife, the woman I'd married 5 years ago, the woman I'd trusted to be here for Kaylee while I served. "I just need to know you're safe. Where were you? Why a motel when you have our house?" That was all I asked. "You're so controlling." Jennifer's voice went up an octave, loud enough that I heard Kaylee stop moving in the other room. "I can't breathe with you tracking me. You just got home and you're already interrogating me like one of your soldiers." "Jennifer, I'm not." "You are. You're always asking where I am, what I'm doing, who I'm with." She was yelling now, full volume. "I'm not one of your subordinates, Marcus. I don't need a warden." I stood there, silent, because I'd asked one question, one simple question. "Where were you?" Jennifer grabbed her purse and stormed out, slammed the door. Her car started. Tires squealed, pulling out of the driveway. Kaylee appeared in the doorway. Her face was pale. "Dad," she said quietly, "that wasn't normal. No, it wasn't." I called my lawyer that night. The prenuptial agreement we'd signed 5 years ago had specific clauses. Military JAG attorneys always recommend them for service members. Protection against, against what was starting to look inevitable. The agreement includes deployment infidelity provisions. My lawyer told me over the phone. If Jennifer engaged in an affair while you were deployed, she forfeits military spouse benefits, gets a one-time payment of $50,000. That's it. No ongoing alimony, no pension share, no housing. "And if she didn't?" I asked. "Then she's entitled to standard military spouse benefits, healthcare, commissary access, partial pension, the house for 6 months post-divorce. It's substantial." I looked at the motel receipt on my desk. 3 nights, off base. "How do I prove it?" I asked. "Evidence," he said. "Documentation, witnesses, the burden's on you." I thanked him and hung up. Then I sat alone in my office at 2 a.m., looking at my Silver Star medal. The glass reflected the desk lamp light, made the star gleam. I'd earned it protecting strangers in Afghanistan, and I couldn't even protect my own marriage. The next morning, Hayes called me. "Sir, can you come to the office? Private conversation." I drove to battalion headquarters. Hayes was waiting with the door closed. He had the printout spread across the desk, but now there were more papers, security logs, access records. "I cross-referenced the dates," Hayes said. He wasn't looking at me, staring at the papers instead. "Scott Wheeler's badge entries with your deployment schedule." He slid another sheet across. This one was a timeline. My deployment dates highlighted in yellow. Scott's base access dates highlighted in green. Every green mark fell inside a yellow period, 100% correlation. "He never visited when you were home, sir." Hayes's voice was quiet, careful. "Not once in 14 months, only when you were deployed." The paper made that same rustling sound. "Security grade print, official, undeniable." "There's more," Hayes said. "Lieutenant Colonel Mitchell, Provost Marshall. She started asking questions after I flagged this. Scott Wheeler's a defense contractor. IT systems. He was contracted to install new servers for the Family Readiness Group offices last year. That's how he met Jennifer, I said. It wasn't a question. Yes, sir. She runs the FRG support group. Or... Hayes hesitated. She's supposed to. Barbara, my wife. She leads the actual meetings. She checked the attendance logs last night. He pulled out another paper, a composition notebook, black and white marbled cover, FRG meeting sign-in sheet. Jennifer missed 18 of 22 meetings during your deployment, Hayes said, all excused as personal emergency. But Barbara never saw her, never knew what the emergencies were. My hands were flat on the desk, steady, controlled, but inside something was breaking. Thank you, Robert, I said. Hayes finally looked at me. Sir, if you've ever felt like you were asking too many questions, like you were being controlling for just wanting to know where your wife was... He stopped, cleared his throat. You weren't. You were deployed in a combat zone. You had every right to know your family was safe. The printout sat between us. 46 entries, 46 lies. I picked up the paper, folded it, put it in my pocket. If you've ever asked a simple question, where were you? Are you okay? And been called controlling for just wanting to know someone's safe, you're not alone. That's not control. That's care. And there's a difference. Kaylee found the pregnancy test 2 days later. She'd been looking for a hairbrush in the bathroom, checked the cabinet under the sink. The test box was there, first response, pink and white packaging, torn flap. She brought it to me in my office, closed the door behind her. Dad, she said. She set the box on my desk. I found this under the sink. I picked it up. The cardboard had that glossy coating, made a sound when I turned it over. The test stick was still inside. Positive. She told me 3 days ago, I said, that she's pregnant, 10 weeks. Kaylee sat down in the chair across from my desk. She was wearing her JROTC uniform, home from school. She looked so much like her mother, my first wife, the one who died from cancer 8 years ago. Kaylee had been 9 then. She'd been through enough loss already. Dad, Kaylee said carefully, you've been home for 6 weeks. I nodded, didn't say anything. 10 weeks means... She trailed off, did the math. February, early February. I pulled the motel receipt from my desk drawer, set it next to the pregnancy test box, February 8th through 10th. Kaylee's face went white. Oh no, she understood. She was 17, smart, in JROTC. Wanted to go to West Point like I had. She understood numbers, timelines, evidence. There's something else, I said. I opened my desk drawer again, pulled out something wrapped in cloth, my deployment coin, the challenge coin from my Afghanistan tour. February 2024 through November 2024, the hardest 9 months of my career. I kept all my challenge coins in a velvet display case in this office. Each one was heavy, maybe 2 ounces of brass or bronze. They made a distinctive clink when you picked them up. Metal on metal. The Afghanistan 2024 coin had our unit insignia etched into it. You could trace every detail with your fingertip. I'd polish them all the day before I deployed. This coin, I said, represents the worst 9 months of my life. Combat operations, firefights. I watched soldiers die, Kaylee. I wrote letters to their families. Kaylee was staring at the coin in my hand. Yesterday, I said, you borrowed Jennifer's car to run to the commissary. Yes, Kaylee whispered. Did you find anything in the car? Her hands were shaking. She reached into her pocket, pulled out a challenge coin. My Afghanistan 2024 coin. It was in the cup holder, Kaylee said. Her voice was breaking. In Scott Wheeler's car. I borrowed his car because Jennifer's had a flat tire, and I saw this. I knew it was yours because of the unit patch. I've seen your collection 100 times. The coin sat on my desk between us. Jennifer had given it to him, my deployment coin, the symbol of my sacrifice, the physical representation of 9 months away from my family, 9 months in danger, 9 months of service. She'd given it to the man she was sleeping with. "Dad," Kaylee said. She was crying now, quiet tears. "What do we do?" Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. Text message from Hayes. "Found something else. Can you come to Battalion HQ? Urgent." Hayes met me in the parking lot. He looked grim. In his hand was a gray plastic flip phone, cheap, Walmart Trek phone sticker on the back, scratched screen. "One of the gate guards found this in the visitor parking lot this morning," Hayes said. "They were going to turn it into lost and found, but the guard recognized the number." "What number?" I asked. "It's been calling base security multiple times. Scott Wheeler used it to call ahead when he was coming to visit. The guard remembered because it was always the same number, always the same voice, a woman's voice." Hayes handed me the phone. I flipped it open. The sound was loud, that distinctive snap of cheap plastic. The screen lit up. 673 messages. I opened the first conversation. Contact saved as S. The messages went back 14 months, February 2024, right when Scott Wheeler had started his IT contract on base. I scrolled, read. From J, "M leaves for deployment next week, then we'll have 9 months. From S, "Can't wait, I'll miss you." From J, "FRG meeting tonight, I'm not going, come over at 8. From S, "On my way." From J, "He wrote me another letter, asking if I'm okay, if I need anything. God, I feel terrible." From S, "Don't, he's never home anyway." I kept scrolling. The messages got more explicit, plans, details, hotel bookings, and then from S, 5 more days and M goes back to Afghanistan. Then we have 9 months free again. Can't wait. From J, "Me too, I'm counting down." The screen went blurry. I realized my hands were shaking. They'd been counting down, waiting for me to leave, wanting me gone, back to a war zone, back to danger, so they could be together. Hayes was watching me. His face was stone, but I could see the anger, the disgust. "There's more," he said quietly. "Keep reading." I scrolled further, found messages from March, after I'd come home. From S, "Have to pick M up from airfield at 3 p.m. Back in character, miss you already." J, "That was my homecoming, March 3rd. Jennifer had texted Scott 2 hours before picking me up. Back in character." The whole thing had been a performance. I looked up at Hayes. "Where's Kaylee?" "At your house. I called her, told her to meet you there." I got in my truck, drove home. The burner phone in my passenger seat, 673 messages, 14 months of lies. Kaylee was waiting on the front porch when I pulled up. She looked at my face and knew immediately. "Dad?" I handed her the phone. "Read it." She did, scrolling, reading, her face going from pale to gray. When she got to the message, 5 more days and M goes back to Afghanistan, she stopped, looked up at me. "They wanted you gone," she whispered. "They were counting down until you left." I nodded, couldn't speak. Kaylee kept reading, got to the homecoming message. "Back in character." She dropped the phone on the porch, put her hands over her face, started crying. I sat down next to her, put my arm around her shoulders, and for the first time since I'd gotten home from Afghanistan, I let myself cry too. My wife had been counting down the days until I went back to war. The sheriff arrived at morning formation 5 days later. I was standing in front of 850 soldiers. Battalion formation, 6:45 a.m. sharp. The way we did it every morning, flags raised, announcements made, mission briefings given. The sheriff's cruiser pulled up to the edge of the parade ground. He got out, walked across the grass in his brown uniform, boots crunching on the frost. Hayes saw him first, stepped toward me. "Sir," but it was too late. "Colonel Marcus Jameson?" the sheriff called out, loud enough that every soldier heard. "Yes," I said. He held out papers, legal documents, folded, official seal visible on the outside. "You're being served with a restraining order," he said. His voice carried across the entire formation. "You are prohibited from contacting Jennifer Jameson or approaching within 500 feet of her residence, place of employment, or vehicle. Violation is a criminal offense." I took the papers. My hands were steady. Military training, 24 years of it. You don't show emotion in front of your soldiers, but inside everything was falling apart. 850 pairs of eyes on me, watching their battalion commander get served a restraining order by a civilian sheriff at morning formation. I looked at the papers. Jennifer's signature at the bottom, her lawyer's name at the top. The language was clear. Petitioner fears for her safety and the safety of her unborn child due to respondent's threatening behavior and abuse of military authority. Threatening behavior, abuse of military authority. I'd asked where she was. That was all I'd done. "Dismissed?" I said to the formation. My voice didn't shake. "Sergeants, take charge of your platoons." The formation broke, soldiers dispersing, but the whispers started immediately. I could hear them, feel them, the gossip spreading like wildfire through Fort Liberty. The battalion commander's wife got a restraining order against him. Hayes stayed beside me. "Sir, this is—" "I know what it is, Robert," I said quietly. "She's striking first, making me look like the aggressor before the evidence comes out." The sheriff got back in his cruiser, drove away. I walked back to my office, alone, the restraining order in my hand. The paper felt like a weapon. Base Commander Colonel Patricia Vance called me in 2 hours later. Her office was on the 3rd floor of headquarters, windows overlooking the parade ground, American flag in the corner, photos of 30 years of service on the walls. Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Mitchell was there too, Provost Marshal, military police. She was the one who'd been investigating Scott Wheeler's security violations. "Marcus," Colonel Vance said. She gestured to the chair. "Sit." I sat. Mitchell stayed standing, arms crossed. "I need to know," Vance said. Her voice was careful, measured. "Did you threaten Jennifer? Did you use your position as battalion commander to intimidate her?" The question hung in the air. "Ma'am," I said, "I asked my wife where she'd been while I was deployed in Afghanistan. That's all I did." Vance looked at Mitchell. Mitchell pulled out a folder, set it on the desk. "Colonel Jameson," Mitchell said, "I've been reviewing security logs. Scott Wheeler, civilian contractor, entered Fort Liberty 46 times during your deployment. Always overnight visits, always to your residence." She opened the folder. The same green bar printout Hayes had shown me. But now there were more documents, photos, security footage, stills. "Your wife filed this restraining order claiming you're controlling and threatening," Mitchell continued. "But the evidence suggests she has significant motivation to discredit you before a divorce. The prenuptial agreement you have, I've reviewed it with JAG. If she's found to have committed adultery during your deployment, she loses all military spouse benefits." Vance leaned forward. "Marcus, I need the truth, the whole truth, because this affects unit cohesion. It affects your command authority. It affects everything." I looked at both of them. 2 senior officers, women who'd fought their way up through a male-dominated military. They knew what it meant to be questioned, doubted, accused. "Ma'am," I said to Vance, "I came home from 9 months in Afghanistan. My wife was distant, cold. I found a motel receipt. I asked where she'd been. She called me controlling, yelled at me in front of my daughter. 3 days later, Sergeant Major Hayes showed me the base access logs." I pulled out my phone, showed them photos of the burner phone messages. 673 texts, the countdown. 5 more days and M goes back to Afghanistan. Vance read. Her face hardened. "They were counting down," I said. My voice was quiet, controlled. "Until I left, until I went back to a war zone so they could be together. Mitchell took the phone, scrolled through the messages. Her jaw tightened. "This isn't controlling behavior," Mitchell said. "This is a soldier asking basic questions about his family's safety during deployment." Vance nodded. "Sarah, continue your investigation. I want everything, every security log, every witness, every piece of evidence. And Marcus," she looked at me, "you're staying in command. This restraining order is civilian. It doesn't affect your military duties, but be careful. She's going to paint you as the villain. We need to be ready." "Yes, ma'am," I said. I stood, saluted, walked out. But the damage was done. The restraining order was public. The gossip was everywhere. And Jennifer had gotten exactly what she wanted, a head start on the narrative. Kaylee found Jennifer 3 days later, in the commissary parking lot. I wasn't there. Kaylee called me afterward. Her voice was shaking. "Dad, I saw her at the commissary. I couldn't just walk away." "What happened?" I asked. Kaylee took a breath. "She was getting groceries. I walked up to her. I had your letters in my car, the ones from Afghanistan. I'd been reading them, and I had to say something." I waited, silent. "I asked her," Kaylee said. "I asked her how she could do it, how she could betray you while you were deployed, while you were getting shot at." "What did she say?" "She said you were never home anyway, that you chose the army over her, that she was lonely." Kaylee's voice broke. "Dad, she said you were controlling, that asking where she was, what she was doing, that was surveillance, that she couldn't breathe." I closed my eyes, leaned against my desk. "And I said," Kaylee was crying now, full sobs. "I said, my dad was getting shot at. Do you understand that? People were trying to kill him. And you were here with Scott. How could you?" "Kaylee," "She walked away, Dad. She just walked away. Didn't answer. Got in her car and left. And everyone was staring. All the other military spouses. They saw. They heard." I could picture it. The commissary parking lot. Military families everywhere. Fort Liberty was a small community. Everyone knew everyone. And now everyone knew what Kaylee had said. The truth was spreading. But so was the gossip. The sides were forming. "You did the right thing," I said quietly. "Speaking the truth, that's never wrong." "But Dad," Kaylee whispered, "everyone thinks you're the bad guy. They don't know what you sacrificed. They don't know you wrote letters every week, even when your hands were shaking from the missions." My daughter, 17 years old, defending her father in a parking lot while her stepmother drove away. If you were Kaylee, 17 years old, caught between your dad and stepmom, would you stand by your father publicly, even if it means losing your stepmother forever? Or try to stay neutral, protect yourself from the fallout? There's no easy answer. Kaylee had to choose, and she chose truth. Lieutenant Colonel Mitchell's investigation moved fast. She called me in a week later. Her office was filled with evidence, documents spread across every surface, photos, printouts, interviews. "I've confirmed everything," Mitchell said. She was all business, no nonsense. "Scott Wheeler used his contractor badge to enter base 46 times, all during your deployment. I pulled security footage from the gates. He drove straight to your residence, every time." She showed me stills, Scott's truck, entering at night, leaving in the morning. "I contacted the motel," Mitchell continued. "Budget in." The manager recognized the photos, confirmed Jennifer and Scott checked in together. 3 nights, February 8th through 10th. He remembers because they paid cash. Unusual for a multi-night stay. She pulled out another document. The FRG meeting sign-in sheet. Barbara Hayes' composition notebook. Black and white marbled cover. "Barbara Hayes keeps meticulous records," Mitchell said. "Jennifer missed 18 of 22 FRG meetings during your deployment, all excused as personal emergencies. But Barbara never knew what the emergencies were. No one did." Mitchell stacked the documents, organized, precise. I've also audited Scott Wheeler's badge usage, she said. He was contracted for IT work. His badge should only have been used during business hours, for specific locations, server rooms, FRG offices. That's it. She pulled out a report, official, stamped. He violated access protocols 46 times, used his badge for personal visits. That's a security breach. I've recommended his clearance be revoked. He'll lose his contract. His career in defense contracting is over. I looked at all the evidence. Months of lies, documented, proven, irrefutable. The prenuptial agreement, I said. Can this prove infidelity? Yes, Mitchell said. Combined with the burner phone messages, the motel confirmation, the security footage, it's more than enough. JAG is reviewing everything. Captain Turner, your attorney, she's confident. I nodded. Thank you, Sarah. Marcus, she said. Her voice softened slightly. You weren't controlling. You were a soldier asking if your family was safe. Anyone who says otherwise doesn't understand what deployment means. I left her office with copies of everything, evidence, proof, the truth. But the damage to my reputation was already done. I saw Scott Wheeler 5 days later, on base outside the PX. He was walking to his truck, contractor badge still clipped to his belt. He hadn't been officially terminated yet. The paperwork was processing. I was getting out of my truck, saw him, and something inside me snapped. I walked over, fast. My hands were fists. Wheeler, I said. He turned, saw me. His face went pale. Colonel Jameson, he said. Tried to sound casual, failed. You were in my house, I said. My voice was low, dangerous. 46 times while I was in Afghanistan, while I was getting shot at, while I was trying to keep my soldiers alive. Scott backed up. I don't know what you're... Yes, you do. I stepped closer. 673 text messages. 5 more days and M goes back to Afghanistan. You were counting down, waiting for me to leave. His back hit his truck. Trapped. You gave her a deployment coin, I said. My coin from Afghanistan. The worst 9 months of my life. And she gave it to you like it was nothing. Look, man. Scott held up his hands. Jennifer said you guys were having problems, that you were never home, that I was serving my country. I was shaking, that I was deployed in a combat zone. Colonel, Scott said, his voice cracked. She said you were controlling, that you tracked her, interrogated her. I asked where she was. I was inches from his face now. That's all I did. I asked if she was safe, because I was in Afghanistan. Because my job was to worry about everyone's safety, including hers. Scott looked away, couldn't meet my eyes. Semper Fi, right, Colonel? He said quietly, mockingly, always faithful. That's when I lunged. My hands went for his collar, slammed him back against the truck. Scott's head hit the window. He yelped. You don't get to say that, I yelled. You don't get to mock. Arms grabbed me. Pulled me back. Military police, 2 of them. They'd been patrolling the parking lot, saw the confrontation. Colonel Jameson, step back, one of them ordered. I let go. Step back. My chest heaving, hands shaking. Scott slid down the truck. You're crazy. You're just a controlling... He didn't finish. The MPs stepped between us. Colonel, you need to leave, the MP said. Now. I walked back to my truck, got in, drove away, but I could still hear Scott's voice. Semper Fi, right, Colonel? Always faithful. I'd lived by that motto for 24 years. Faithful to my country, my soldiers, my family, my wife, and she destroyed it. Sunday morning, March 23rd, chapel service. I hadn't been to chapel since I got home. Too much chaos, too much anger, too much everything. But Kaylee wanted to go. She'd been raised going to chapel. Her mother, my first wife, had taken her every Sunday before the cancer, and I'd promised to keep that tradition when she died, so I went. The chapel was full. Fort Liberty had a large congregation, military families, active duty, retirees, 200 people easy. Kaylee and I sat in the back. I was in civilian clothes, polo shirt, khakis, trying to blend in, but people noticed. Whispers started immediately, heads turning, eyes staring. The battalion commander, the one with the restraining order, the one whose wife accused him of abuse. Chaplain David Peterson was leading the service. He saw me, nodded, gave a small, sad smile. The service started. Hymns, prayers, scripture reading. I tried to focus, tried to pray, but all I could feel was the weight of the stares, the judgment, the gossip. Kaylee sat beside me. She was holding something. I looked down. Her hands were wrapped around a small book, her childhood Bible, pink leather, worn from years of use, the one I'd given her when she was 7, before her mother died. She saw me looking. "I brought it," she whispered, out for strength. I put my arm around her shoulders. The service continued. A hymn started. The congregation stood, singing. And that's when Kaylee started crying. Not quiet tears, full sobs, her whole body shaking. People turned, stared. Kaylee dropped the Bible, covered her face with her hands. The sobs got louder. "Kaylee," I whispered, "it's okay, we can leave." But she was already running. Down the aisle, past the pews, out the doors. I followed, fast. Heard the whispers explode behind me. "That's his daughter. Poor thing. Did you hear what happened?" I found Kaylee in the parking lot, bent over, hands on her knees, crying so hard she couldn't breathe. "Kaylee," I said. I put my hand on her back. "Breathe. Just breathe." She looked up at me. Her face was red, tears streaming. "Everyone thinks you're the bad guy," she sobbed. "They don't know. They don't know what you sacrificed. They don't know you wrote letters every week. They don't know you came home and she was already..." She couldn't finish. I pulled her close, held her, let her cry into my shoulder. "You know the truth," I said quietly. "That's all that matters." "But it's not fair." Kaylee's voice was muffled. "You served. You protected people. You saved lives. And she..." "I know," I said. "I know." We stood there in the parking lot, father and daughter, both of us crying now, both of us broken. The chapel doors opened, people coming out. Service was over. They saw us, stared, whispered more. But I didn't care anymore. Let them whisper, let them judge. I had my daughter. She knew the truth, and the evidence would speak for itself. The JAG proceedings started 2 weeks later, April 8th. Family court building on base. Not a full trial, just a hearing. Restraining order review, divorce preliminary, evidence presentation. Captain Emily Turner represented me. She was JAG, Judge Advocate General's Corps, 34 years old, sharp, precise. She'd reviewed every piece of evidence Lieutenant Colonel Mitchell had gathered. "We're going to tell the truth," Turner said before we went in. "Simple, direct, no drama, just facts." Jennifer was there with her lawyer, civilian attorney, expensive suit. He'd been coaching her on the controlling husband narrative for weeks. Judge Harold Morrison presided, military judge, 28 years on the bench. He'd seen everything. The courtroom wasn't large, maybe 50 seats, but it was packed. Military community. Word had spread. People wanted to see how this played out. Kaylee sat in the gallery, front row. She'd insisted on being there. The hearing began. Jennifer's lawyer went first, painted the picture he wanted. Marcus Jameson, controlling battalion commander, used his military authority to intimidate, tracked his wife's movements, interrogated her, made her feel unsafe. "My client," he said, "feared for her safety and the safety of her unborn child. She had no choice but to seek protection from the court." Jennifer sat there, looking fragile, pregnant, scared. I watched her performance. It was good. She'd practiced. Then Captain Turner stood. "Your Honor," she said, "I'd like to enter evidence." She submitted everything. The base access logs, green bar computer paper with 46 entries, each one time-stamped, each one during my deployment. The security footage stills. Scott's truck entering the gate, leaving at dawn, the burner phone messages, all 673 of them, printed out, highlighted, the motel receipt, the manager's statement, the security footage from Budget Inn showing Jennifer and Scott checking in together, the FRG meeting sign-in sheet, Barbara Hayes' composition notebook, 18 missed meetings, all during my deployment, Scott Wheeler's contractor badge audit, 46 security violations, the prenuptial agreement, with the deployment infidelity clause highlighted. Judge Morrison reviewed everything, silent, his face unreadable. Then Turner said, "Your Honor, I'd like to read something into the record." She pulled out a letter. Aged paper, yellow from heat and dust, APO address on the envelope, my deployment letter from Afghanistan. This letter, Turner said, was written by Colonel Jameson on February 9th, 2024, from a combat outpost in Kandahar province. He was on day 7 of a 14-day operation. She opened it. The paper made that soft, rustling sound. I could smell it from where I sat. Dust, diesel, the Middle East. Turner began reading. "Dear Kaylee, I hope you're doing well in school. I'm sorry I missed your JROTC ceremony. I know you worked hard for that promotion. I'm proud of you." My throat tightened. "It's been hard here. We lost a soldier yesterday. I can't say his name or the details, but I want you to know I'm thinking about his family, about how much sacrifice this all costs." Kaylee was crying in the gallery, silent tears. "Tell Jennifer I love her and think of her every night. Tell her I can't wait to come home to her. Tell her I'm sorry I have to be away so long, but this is what I do. This is who I am, and I need to know you're both safe. That's all that keeps me going out here." Turner paused, let the words hang. "I'll be home soon. Stay strong. Love, Dad." She set the letter down, then pulled out another document, the motel receipt, held them side by side. "Your Honor," Turner said, "this letter was written on February 9th. Colonel Jameson was in a combat zone, under fire, worrying about his family." She pointed to the motel receipt. "On February 9th, Jennifer Jameson was at Budget Inn, room 127, with Scott Wheeler." The courtroom was silent. Turner looked at Jennifer. "The same day your husband was writing you a love letter from Afghanistan, you were at a motel with another man." Jennifer's face went white. Judge Morrison leaned forward. "Mrs. Jameson, where were you when your husband wrote this letter?" Jennifer opened her mouth, closed it. Her lawyer put his hand on her arm. She didn't answer. The judge looked at the evidence again. The letters, the motel receipt, the security logs, the burner phone messages. He read one message aloud himself. 5 more days and M goes back to Afghanistan, then we have 9 months free again." He looked up, straight at Jennifer. "You were counting down," he said, "until your husband deployed, so you could be with Mr. Wheeler." Still silence. "Your Honor," Jennifer's lawyer tried. "My client felt surveilled, monitored, unable to live freely. Colonel Jameson's questions were constant, invasive. She had no privacy." "No privacy?" Judge Morrison's voice was sharp. "Colonel Jameson was deployed in Afghanistan. He asked where his wife was. That's not surveillance. That's basic concern. That's what any spouse would do when they're thousands of miles away in danger." He picked up the restraining order petition. Read from it. "Threatening behavior, abuse of military authority." "Mrs. Jameson, what specific threats did Colonel Jameson make?" Jennifer looked at her lawyer. He whispered something to her. He asked where I'd been," she said quietly. "Multiple times. He wouldn't let it go." "He asked where you'd been," Morrison repeated, "while he was deployed, while he was in combat. And you call that threatening?" "I felt threatened," Jennifer said. "You felt threatened because he discovered your affair," Morrison said. "These questions weren't threats. They were a husband, a deployed soldier, trying to understand why his wife was distant, why she was lying, why she needed a motel when she had a home. He looked at the security logs again. Scott Wheeler entered Fort Liberty 46 times during Colonel Jameson's deployment, overnight visits to Colonel Jameson's residence, where his daughter lived, where his home was supposed to be safe. Morrison set down the papers. Colonel Jameson wasn't controlling. He was deployed in combat. Asking where your spouse is while you're being shot at in Afghanistan isn't control. It's basic human concern. He looked directly at Jennifer. You weaponized that concern to hide betrayal. You called it abuse. You filed a restraining order to discredit him before evidence of your infidelity could surface. Jennifer's lawyer stood. Your Honor, sit down, Morrison said. I'm not finished. He picked up the prenuptial agreement. This agreement has a specific clause. Dishonorable spouse conduct during deployment. Infidelity while a service member is deployed in a combat zone. Mrs. Jameson, you violated that clause systematically for 9 months, documented in 673 text messages. He stamped something on the restraining order. Restraining order dismissed with prejudice. No basis, in fact, no credible threat. Petition was filed in bad faith to gain advantage in divorce proceedings. Jennifer's face crumbled. Furthermore, Morrison continued, the prenuptial agreement is enforceable. Infidelity clause is triggered. Mrs. Jameson, you forfeit all military spouse benefits. You will receive a one-time payment of $50,000 as specified in the agreement. No alimony, no pension share, no ongoing benefits. You have 30 days to vacate military housing. He looked at me. Colonel Jameson, this court finds no evidence of controlling behavior, no evidence of threats, no evidence of abuse of authority. What this court sees is a soldier who asked reasonable questions and was gaslit by his spouse into believing he was wrong for caring. His voice softened slightly. This isn't control. This is protective parenting. You were protecting your daughter from exposure to deception. You were protecting your family's integrity. That's not abuse. That's duty. I felt something break open in my chest. Relief, vindication, pain, all at once. Court is adjourned, Morrison said. The gavel came down. Kaylee met me in the hallway outside, threw her arms around me, both of us crying now. He said it, she whispered. He said you weren't controlling. He said it was protective parenting. I held her, my daughter, 17 years old. She'd watched her father be dragged through hell, watched him be called abusive, controlling, threatening, and now a judge had said the truth. I needed to know you were safe, I said quietly. The words I'd said so many times, in letters, in conversations, in questions that got twisted into accusations. That's all I ever wanted, to know you were safe. I know, Dad, Kaylee said. I always knew. The consequences came fast. Scott Wheeler's security clearance was officially revoked 3 days later. His contract terminated. Lieutenant Colonel Mitchell personally delivered the notification. Mr. Wheeler, she told him in her office, you violated security protocols 46 times, used your contractor badge for unauthorized personal visits. You're banned from all military installations. Your clearance is revoked permanently. You will not work in defense contracting again. Scott's career was over. His reputation destroyed. The military community was small. Word spread fast. No one would hire him. Jennifer moved out of our house within a week, took her things, moved in with her mother in town. The military spouse community had turned on her. Barbara Hayes, who'd run the FRG meetings Jennifer never attended, had made sure everyone knew the truth. We support our soldiers, Barbara had said at the last FRG meeting, not those who betray them while they're deployed. Jennifer was done, finished, shunned, but there was still the baby. Scott's parents came to see me 2 weeks later, April 26th. They knocked on my door, an older couple, late 60s, gray hair, weathered faces. They looked devastated. "Colonel Jameson," the father said. His voice was rough. "I'm Thomas Wheeler. This is my wife, Margaret. We're Scott's parents." I let them in, offered coffee. They sat in my living room, looked at the photos on the walls, my Silver Star shadow box, Kaylee's JROTC pictures. Margaret Wheeler started crying before she even spoke. "We're so sorry," she said. "We're so sorry for what our son did. We raised him better than this. We thought we did. But he—" She couldn't finish. Thomas put his hand on his wife's shoulder, looked at me. "We know about the baby," he said. "Jennifer's pregnant. DNA test confirmed it's Scott's. And we know Jennifer doesn't want it. She's already said she wants to give it up." I waited, silent. "We'd like to adopt," Thomas said. "Margaret and I. We're still young enough, healthy. We have a stable home. We're retired. We have time. And this baby, our grandchild, deserves better than what our son and your wife have become." Margaret looked at me with red eyes. "My son dishonored himself and your family," she said. "I don't know where we went wrong with him, but this baby deserves love, deserves stability. Let us try to make this right. We'll adopt and raise the child. You'll never have to see us again if you don't want to. But please, let us do this one thing to make amends." I looked at them. Two parents, devastated by their son's actions, trying to do the right thing for an innocent child. Marcus and Kaylee redefined what family means. Not who you're born to, not who you marry, but who shows up, who honors their word, who stays faithful when faithfulness costs everything. If you've built your own chosen family, blood or not, tell me about them in the comments. And if this story moved you, subscribe. I tell stories about honor, betrayal, and what it means to protect the people you love. I'll see you in the next one. "Yes," I said to the Wheelers, "adopt the baby, give them a good home. That's what matters." Margaret Wheeler broke down completely. Thomas shook my hand, tears in his eyes. "Thank you," he said. "We won't let you down. We promise." They left, and I sat alone in my living room, thinking about how complicated everything had become, but also how sometimes grace came from the most unexpected places. Base Commander Colonel Vance called me to her office 3 days later. "Marcus," she said when I walked in, "sit." I sat. She was smiling slightly, rare for her. "I've reviewed everything that happened," she said. "The investigation, the court proceedings, the evidence, and I want you to know the Army is proud of you." "Ma'am," I said. "You handled betrayal during your service with honor and restraint," Vance said. "You didn't lash out, didn't abuse your authority, didn't use your rank to intimidate. You let the evidence speak. You let the system work. That's leadership." She pulled out a letter, official Army letterhead. "This is a formal commendation," she said, "for your character during a difficult personal situation, for maintaining unit cohesion despite public scandal, for protecting your daughter while upholding military values." She handed me the letter. "The Army is grateful, Colonel. Your soldiers are grateful. And you're staying in command until your retirement ceremony. You've earned that." I took the letter, read it. My throat was tight. "Thank you, ma'am," I said. Vance stood, shook my hand. "Go finish strong, Marcus. You've got 3 weeks left. Make them count." The retirement ceremony was March 28th, 3 weeks later, exactly 4 weeks after the judge's ruling. Fort Liberty Parade Ground, full battalion formation, 850 soldiers in dress uniform, flags raised, families in the bleachers, blue sky overhead. I stood at the front, dress uniform, my Silver Star on my chest. The medal gleamed in the sunlight, all my other medals too, 24 years of ribbons and decorations. Kaylee was beside me in her JROTC dress uniform, standing at attention, so proud, so strong. The ceremony began. Colonel Vance spoke, talked about my career, my service, my deployments, my leadership. Colonel Marcus Jameson has served this nation with distinction for 24 years, she said. Her voice carried across the parade ground. He's led soldiers in combat, saved lives, earned medals, built a battalion that excels in every metric. She paused, and through personal hardship he maintained his integrity. He showed us what it means to serve with honor, not just on the battlefield, but in every aspect of life. The soldiers stood silent. Perfect discipline. Command Sergeant Major Hayes stepped forward. He was carrying the guidon, the battalion flag, our unit colors. I'd carried that flag into battle, led those soldiers through hell and back. Hayes handed it to me. One last time. I held it, felt the weight of it, the fabric moving slightly in the breeze. Then I passed it to my successor, Lieutenant Colonel David Crawford. He'd take over the battalion, lead these soldiers forward. Take care of them, I said quietly. They're the best. Crawford nodded. I will, sir, I promise. The soldiers saluted. Perfect synchronization. 850 hands to 850 foreheads. I saluted back. Then it was over. 24 years done, the formation broke. Soldiers came forward, shook my hand, thanked me. Some were crying, young privates who'd served under me, old sergeants who'd been with me for years. Best commander I ever had, one said. You took care of us, sir, another said. We'll never forget. Families approached, military spouses. They'd heard everything that happened, the scandal, the truth, the vindication. Barbara Hayes hugged me. We always knew, she said, we always knew you were a good man. Others echoed her. The community had rallied. Once the truth came out, once the evidence was public, they'd stood behind me. But I was done with all of it. The politics, the gossip, the military life. I was retiring, going civilian, focusing on what mattered. Kaylee. After the ceremony ended, after the crowds dispersed, Kaylee and I stood alone on the parade ground. The sun was setting, orange and purple across the sky. The flags were down. The base was quiet. Kaylee was still in her uniform. I was still in mine. Dad, she said, what are you going to do now after this? I looked at her. My daughter, 17 years old, about to graduate high school, about to go to West Point, about to start her own military career. I'm going to be here for you, I said, whatever you need. West Point applications, visits, advice. I'm not deploying again. I'm not leaving. I'm just here. Kaylee smiled, tears in her eyes. You've always been here. Even when you were deployed, even when you were in Afghanistan, you were always here. I pulled her close, put my arm around her shoulders. I needed to know you were safe, I said quietly. The words I'd said so many times, the words that had been twisted into accusations, the words a judge had finally vindicated. That's all I ever wanted, to know you were safe. I know, Dad, Kaylee said. She leaned her head on my shoulder. I always knew. We stood there as the sun set over Fort Liberty, father and daughter, both in uniform, both standing strong. The betrayal was behind us, the lies exposed, the truth told, and ahead of us, whatever came next, we'd face it together, always faithful, semper fi.